Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Geraghty.
And welcome, everyone, to the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. We have bad, and crazy martinis for conservatives today. All of it brought to you by ZipRecruiter, ZipRecruiter.com/martini. Much more on that in just a moment. Jim, let's begin with our first bad martini. And to no one's surprise, it's Michael Cohen's testimony before the House Oversight Committee today. It's bad in a number of ways. Let's start off with the fact that Michael Cohen is a couple months away from going to federal prison for a number of years for a number of crimes, but lying to Congress is one of them. And so he's the first major witness from the Democratic majority on the House Oversight Committee. And he touted his own credibility today with this line.
For those who question my motives for being here today, I understand. I have lied, but I am not a liar.
While I get you on that one, here's what he had to say about President Trump.
I am ashamed that I chose to take part in concealing Mr. Trump's illicit acts rather than listening to my own conscience. I am ashamed because I know what Mr. Trump is. He is a racist, he is a con man, and he is a cheat.
He also went on to say that Trump is, in fact, individual one in the court documents surrounding his case, which is the worst kept secret in jurisprudence. And he also said that Trump lied about the Trump Tower project in Moscow, and that while Trump didn't specifically tell him to lie to Congress about it, the Trump lawyers crafted his testimony, so essentially he did. So, Jim, what do you make of this spectacle with the convicted liar now spilling the beans, so to speak, on President Trump?
You know, Greg, this annoyed me more than I thought it was going to. I thought I was ready for it. I had braced myself. I had written in today's Morning Jolt that, look, there are no heroes in this story. There are no good guys. This is the Iran-Iraq war. This is Alien versus Predator. You know, insert whatever villain versus villain. There is nobody who's on the side of the angels in this one. But Cohen ended up really annoying me, in part of it because I think he really seems to believe he can fool the rest of us into seeing him as a noble whistleblower. Who has finally seen too much and must come forward. And oh, by the way, yeah, he lied in this exact situation not that long ago. Counselor, you were in this you-know-what up to your eyeballs for a decade, so don't tell me how troubled your conscience was all along. I guess we could say, Greg, that he spent the better part of 10 years working for then private citizen Trump, and then up until May 2018 for President Trump. And that entire time, Greg, he was wrestling with his conscience. And doggone if he didn't manage to pin his conscience every single time. Huh? Kind of interesting. Now, look, his portrait of Trump world being full of mendacity and sleaze and corruption, it all sounds plausible enough. It's not like we're, anything, a lot of what he's saying, variations of his, S-word whole countries. And so we've heard versions of that from Trump or from other people around Trump at various points before he was elected into office and after. But I'm going to need more than just Michael Cohen's word before I accept this. This is, I guess one of the things really annoying here is that, you're seeing the Democrats, a couple of Democrats are openly acknowledging you're something of a flawed witness here. We have good reason to doubt you, not just because of your previous record and sleaziness, but because you literally lied about this before. And when he goes and plays games like I lied, but I am not a liar, you just want to give him a dictionary. You just want him to, look at that more carefully. Or what is, I lied a lot before under oath, but take me seriously and trust me under oath now. And I'm sorry, I just don't. The third thing that is kind of annoying is just the camera. We saw this during the Kavanaugh hearings last year. We've seen this in just about every high-profile hearing to come down the pike in the last couple of years. But the camera preening, the antics, these things like that from members of Congress, I think is genuinely embarrassing for the country. You would not hire this crew to get to the bottom of anything. They clearly think that they can turn this into some sort of good fundraising YouTube video or something like that. They aren't focused on getting to the actual straight answers and stuff. People are pointing out that, the Republicans on the committee are generally pointing out, Michael Cohen, yes, you're saying these terrible things about the president, but aren't you sleaze? And yes, Michael Cohen is sleaze. He was also someone who was hired by Trump and happily employed by Trump for the better part of a decade. So, kind of hard to understand how anybody thinks they come out of this looking good. I think will this do damage to the president? Look, I mean, Cohen in his 30-minute opening statement offers this really ugly portrait of Trump the man, Trump the mogul, Trump the candidate, and ultimately Trump the president. On the other hand, I don't think that much of it is shocking news to the country. I think the country had a pretty clear picture of his character and the kind of man he was in 2016, and they voted for him anyway because they liked him better than the options. We'll see what happens in 2020 here. But in the other thing is also that one of Cohen's key point is that he says he was never directly told by the president to lie to Congress, but the president told me to lie in his own way, which is kind of assuming the wink and the nod, or he would say things to Cohen, then go out and say things that were untrue to the public, and that Cohen understood he was being told to lie. I don't think that would meet the standard of suborning perjury. I suppose different prosecutors might have different points of view. Look, this is all building up towards impeachment, and I think Democrats will point to this a great deal. I just don't think they grasp how unpersuasive it is. Of course Trump did these terrible things. Michael Cohen said he did it. After swearing an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help him God. By golly, he wouldn't lie under circumstances like that, would he?
Right. Yeah, and while the preening goes on, and you have these 5-minute questioning sessions, so there's no continuity, but then the member, goes on and on for about 4.5 minutes and leaves about 20 seconds left for the person to actually answer any questions. So that's always fun. But Jim Jordan and one other member did a pretty good job of pointing out all the things Cohen was convicted for that had nothing to do with Trump, and said, did Trump make you lie there? Did Trump make you cheat there? And so he had to admit there. But there's no question that Trump world is not one we would want to be part of. But here's one other thing. He was pushed by W. Wasserman Schultz about possible collusion, said he didn't know anything really about that, or at least not enough to state on the record what he thought. But here's a statement from his opening that I think is kind of interesting on that front.
Donald Trump is a man who ran for office to make his brand great, not to make our country great. He had no desire or intention to lead this nation, only to market himself and to build his wealth and power. Mr. Trump would often say, this campaign was going to be the greatest infomercial in political history. He never expected to win the primary. He never expected to win the general election. The campaign, for him, was always a marketing opportunity.
And, of course, that sounds really sleazy. But, Jim, if that's your goal, that kind of weakens the argument that you're colluding with the Russians to win it, right?
At other points in his testimony, he says explicitly Trump would do anything to win. Well, that doesn't really fit with the he didn't expect to win mentality. I think the other contradiction that jumped out to me is that, most of his opening statement is basically laying out a demon's resume and all manner of sins and dishonesty and sleaze and affairs and cover-ups and all of that. But then at other point, though, in his questioning, he said, I was extremely proud to be the personal attorney to the President of the United States, when he says that he was not seeking an administration job. So he's the worst guy ever, but you were very proud to work for him? Mr. Cohen, if it's a shame we don't get to question them, Greg, because I'd like to say, Mr. Cohen, do you listen to yourself, or do you just let the words come out and hope they make sense?
All right, let's move on to another really bad story here. Actually, no, we don't. We need to talk about ZipRecruiter.
Let's recruit some better lawyers. A lot of people might need them.
Yeah, let's cleanse the palate here. Let's talk about some good news and the fact that you can hire some quality people, like Jim said, perhaps to be your lawyer or to just provide ethical guidance in general. I assume many of those people still exist outside of the people involved in the story we just talked about, and that's where ZipRecruiter comes in. Hiring is challenging, but there's one place you can go where hiring is simple, fast, and smart. A place where growing businesses connect to qualified candidates. And that place is ZipRecruiter.com/martini.
ZipRecruiter sends your job to more than 100 of the web's leading job boards. But they don't stop there. With their powerful matching technology, ZipRecruiter scans thousands of resumes to find people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job. As applications come in, ZipRecruiter analyzes each one and spotlights the top candidates so you never miss a great match. ZipRecruiter is so effective that 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within the first day.
And right now, 3 Martini Lunch listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/martini. That's ZipRecruiter.com/MARTINI. ZipRecruiter.com/martini. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. All right, Jim, let's move to our second bad martini now. And if
a lighter topic of nuclear war.
Yeah, very simple. Nothing complicated here at all. CNN. Pakistan says its Air Force shot down 2 Indian fighter jets over the disputed border region of Kashmir in a significant escalation of the crisis between the 2 nuclear-armed powers. India confirmed the loss of 1 plane and said it shot down a Pakistani jet as it responded to the incident. The confrontation came a day after India said it launched airstrikes in Pakistan territory in the first such incursion by Indian Air Force planes since the India-Pakistan War of 1971. Pakistan's chief military spokesperson claimed 2 Indian jets were downed in Wednesday's operation. 1 fell inside Pakistan-controlled Kashmir, while another went down in the Indian-controlled region of Kashmir. He initially claimed 2 Indian pilots were arrested, but said 1 was being treated for injuries in a military hospital. Later, he said only 1 was in custody. So, Jim, we'll see if this escalates beyond this. India allegedly attacking some Pakistani terror sites, non-military targets, they insist. But those of us old enough to remember about roughly 20 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that, just after these 2 countries became nuclear powers, they were very, very close to a nuclear war, again over the disputed area of Kashmir. So we got enough hot spots in this world, from North Korea to Venezuela and many other places, the Middle East, obviously. And now we got this flaring up again.
Yeah, Greg, I know India and Pakistan have had tensions for a long time. You ask people, what do they worry about? People who really study international affairs. Usually this makes the top 10. 2 countries that hate each other's guts and have territorial disputes and have nuclear weapons is generally a very highly charged environment. But we tend to move, this stuff goes on all the time. Now, the thing is that they're allegedly either shooting down each other's planes or claiming to have shot down each other's planes and flying over each other's airspace and things like that. That would you'd think that'd be a big deal. You'd think that'd be the sort of thing that, hey, I know the Cohen thing's going on. I know Trump's meeting with Kim Jong-un in Vietnam over North Korea's nuclear program. But you'd think this would break into the news cycle. Apparently someone was watching earlier today and said that Fox News mentioned it briefly. Maybe Fox News is a little less interested in the Cohen testimony than the other networks. CNN and MSNBC did not mention it at all in a 2-hour span this morning. You'd like to think this would be big news before any nukes go off. As far as we know, there has not been any discussion or worries about this becoming a nuclear exchange. But it's worth noting that very rarely do you plan those sorts of things. And we have 2 countries that have populaces that are full of hostility towards the other. Who will likely react strongly to any act of violence they perceive as a provocation. They will demand retaliation, and it's very easy to see this sort of thing spiraling out of control pretty quickly. So bad news, and it's interesting. Every now and then, I think it was Peggy Noonan wrote last weekend observing that the Trump administration really hasn't had any 5-alarm fire on the global scene. North Korea, firing off test missiles and things like that. Terror attacks. We haven't had a major terrorist attack here on the home front from Islamists or anything like that. We've had various alerts, various small scale problems. But you just kind of wonder, at some point the luck has to run out. And this is an administration that's been through a bunch of national security advisors, two secretaries of defense, 2 secretaries of state, 2 CIA directors. There's been a lot of churn in this administration. I hope everybody's settled in, and I hope everybody's ready, because this sounds like the sort of situation that, hopefully calms down very quickly, and this just turns into a bit of a blip on the radar screen. Or the worst case scenario here is 2 nuclear powers going, toe to toe with each other. And the rest of the world desperately trying to hold them back from reenacting some ABC miniseries from the 80s. That's a reference to the day after for anyone who doesn't always understand my subtle references.
All right, let's move on to our final martini now, Jim, and we're going to classify this one as crazy, but kind of fun. Politico. House Republicans managed to quash Democrats' hearings on climate change Tuesday by outvoting the majority party at the poorly attended event, forcing it to adjourn only minutes after it began. The hearing of the House Natural Resources Panel was to be the latest to dive into climate change since Democrats took control of the House last month, bringing new attention to the issue they complained Republicans had ignored during their 8 years leading the chamber. The hearing was designed to probe the quote-unquote denial playbook that Democrats say fossil fuel backers have copied from cigarette companies, the same tactics used by opioid makers and the National Football League to dispute strong scientific evidence. But Texas Republican Louis Gohmert took issue with the notion that the topic was within the panel's jurisdiction. He quickly motioned to adjourn the hearing before the witnesses could even deliver their opening statements. That motion quickly passed, with the 4 Republicans present outvoting the 2 Democrats in the room. So the hearing officially adjourned. The 2 Democrats who were left still let the witnesses speak, but it wasn't an official hearing at that point. So, Jim, it's fascinating that this issue that we have to address, it's urgent. We have to spend $93 trillion on it now in the next 10 years, but we can't bother to show up for a hearing.
Greg, we don't have time for hearings. We have to pass the legislation without even reading it. That's how pressing this crisis is. Yeah. Look, nothing less than the fate of the planet is at stake here, Greg. But, I mean, come on, those hearings are boring, Greg. Can't expect us to sit through there. By the way, if anyone gets a chance to visit Washington, D.C., I hope you get a chance to, see the wonderful Smithsonian museums, Washington Monument, and things like that. But I do hope that most Americans at some point in their lives get to watch Congress in action, and not just on television. When you get stuff like the Cohen hearings, you're going to get fireworks. You're going to get preening for the cameras and everything I was lamenting earlier. But you watch a non-exciting, a non-top tier congressional hearing or markup or something like that. You might be kind of surprised, one, by how sparse the attendance is. And you could say, these lazy members of Congress aren't, Well, it is also worth noting that most members of Congress are on at least 2 committees. In the Senate, they're on a bunch. Most of the committees are broken up into 4 or 5 different subcommittees. Legislation has to go to a subcommittee, gets to go through a subcommittee before it goes to the full committee, then the full committee to the House. Everybody saw how a bill becomes a law from Schoolhouse Rock, right? We're all familiar with that? Okay, great. And you often will have more than one hearing or markup or floor, going on at the same time. And oh, by the way, the floor votes can pretty much happen with, not much warning at any time. The leadership tries to schedule it between a certain number of hours. They try not to do it anything before Monday night at the earliest. And at the earliest, it's going to be like, the renaming the post office style pieces of legislation. It's not going to be the really important stuff, the stuff that's probably going to pass by voice vote. Then you've got the stuff on Friday afternoon. Very rarely would you get one because everybody's got to get on a plane to get back to their district because nobody wants to be seen as ignoring their district. Look, life can be tough for members of Congress. It can be a little more challenging than it looks from the outside. All of that having been said, when only 2 members show up for a hearing on this, it indicates I don't think that it's, again, if you think this is the life or death, we need to redo every single building in America. We need to change 90% of our energy sources in the next 10 years. This time is running out. But, then you really should show up for the hearings. That's real. If you're expecting us to give up meat, you got to show up for the hearings. I think that's the bare minimum there.
So, Jim, interestingly, we've had 3 amazing stories today that we haven't really talked about. The president in Vietnam meeting with Kim Jong-un. Rumor has it he's staying up through the night over there to watch the Cohen hearing, so I'm sure the talks today will go great.
Yeah, can't wait for the Twitter outroast. Look this way, if there's anything that makes negotiations with a dangerous regime over a nuclear program work better, it's not sleeping through the night. Sleep deprivation is great for working out tense negotiations. Hey, what's the worst that could happen, Greg? At least it's Friday.
Oh, Jim, lucky you. You get the day off tomorrow. You don't. You'll be at CPAC, and so.
No, well, the reason I'm skipping the podcast, Greg, is because I have to go to CPAC and give a talk about the importance of doing a podcast every day. By the way, if you'll be at CPAC, please attend, and you can make fun of me for abandoning Greg and getting someone to fill in for me tomorrow.
Exciting stuff. Enjoy that. We knew this was going to be a crazy week. It's not falling short so far. Jim, we'll talk to you Friday.
See you Friday, Greg.
Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. And don't forget about the great offer at ZipRecruiter. Our listeners can try it for free. ZipRecruiter.com/martini. And tune in Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.